Mozilla's first ever terms of service and privacy policy, raising some eyebrows. Sweden and France are jumping on the encryption backdoor bandwagon, some big news from many beloved FOSS projects, and more. Welcome to Surveillance Report 216, where we are dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news from the past week. I am Nathan from The New Oil.
And I'm Henry from Techlore.
This week, we want to remind you of our sponsor, EasyOptOuts. As many of you know, your data is publicly available all over the internet. Some of you may not know. You should take a minute to look yourself up online, phone number, full name, email address. You might be surprised what you find. And taking all that stuff down, you can do it yourself. That's definitely a very effective way to do it. But it is also extremely time consuming and may not be feasible for everyone, particularly people who are super busy. So there are a handful of data removal services out there, and some are more effective than others. One of our favorites is EasyOptOuts. Both Henry and I use them. They are super affordable. They're only $20 a year, and they do offer refunds if you're not satisfied with the service. We have research from both Consumer Reports and privacy guides, so you can go look into that and see their methodology and what you think. They ask for very minimal information on sign up. You do not have to give them any information that isn't publicly available. They're just trying to use it to find your records and nothing else. There are only 2 employees, so they're not sharing your data with a bunch of third-party contractors and a big company. There are no ads or analytics on the site. Removal requests are not submitted unless they find your data on the site, so they're not just blasting out your data to a bunch of people who might not even have it. They are always adding new sites over time as they become aware of them. And last but not least, they do have business plans. So if you run a business and you're looking for a perk to offer your employees, go ahead and contact them and they will hook you up. We also have a quick correction from last week. Last week, I misspoke as an example of slippery slopes and repressive countries. What I said was Turkey having a journalist murdered. What I was referring to, whose name I couldn't remember off the top of my head, was Jamal Khashoggi. I mixed up my country. Saudi Arabia had him murdered, but it was at their embassy in Turkey. So it physically happened in Turkey, but the Turkish government wasn't responsible. For those of you who were correcting me in good faith, thank you. I apologize for getting it wrong, and I'm sorry if that upset anybody. And not to brush it off, but for the record, I hope that you guys were still able to understand the point that I was trying to make. I was going off script. That wasn't written in the show notes, so I apologize that sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the crappy things that repressive regimes are doing around the world. That'll take us into our highlight story, which is a big one from Mozilla. I'm actually going to draw from a few different sources here, and we'll just say Mozilla is introducing terms of use to Firefox. So first, let's start off with Mozilla themselves, and here's what they said. We're introducing a terms of use for Firefox for the first time, along with an updated privacy notice. Why now? Although we've historically relied on our open source license for Firefox and public commitments to you, we are building in a much different technology landscape today. We want to make these commitments abundantly clear and accessible. In addition to the terms of use, we are providing a more detailed explanation of our data practices in our updated privacy notice. You can go read that blog post. You can go read the terms themselves. It's kind of standard stuff in the sense that it's very vague, very PR friendly. I don't think in and of itself it really says a whole lot, so I'm going to quote a couple of other sources that added some additional context. And the first one is OMG Ubuntu, who wrote, "This official terms of use will, Mozilla argues, offer users more transparency over their rights and permissions as they use Firefox to browse the information superhighway, as well as Mozilla's rights to help them do it. As this excerpt makes clear," and this is a quote from the terms of service, "you give Mozilla all necessary rights to operate Firefox, including processing data as we describe in the privacy notice, as well as acting on your behalf to help you navigate the internet." Quick pause there. That's actually the edited version. The original version, it didn't say all rights necessary. It basically said all rights. Just it was a lot more vague, and they did tighten that up a little bit. I guess that's worth giving them credit for. Continuing on, this is still quoting their terms of service. "When you upload or input information through Firefox, you hereby grant us a non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide license to use that information to help you navigate, experience, and interact with online content as you indicate with your use of Firefox." Again, that one is edited and tightened up. It used to say just information you upload to Firefox or something like that, which was very unclear. OMG Ubuntu notes that Mozilla has since added an addendum to their announcement to clarify the wording in the above excerpts. For example, it says that it, quote, "needs a license to allow us to make some of the basic functionality of Firefox possible. Without it, we couldn't use information typed into Firefox. For example, it does not give us ownership of your data or a right to use it for anything other than what is described in the privacy notice." And actually, on that one, let's bounce over to TechCrunch. And I'm sorry, I've got 4 different sources here, but they all had different perspectives that I thought were relevant. The company told TechCrunch that its privacy notice still applies when using its AI features, and content data is not sent to Mozilla or elsewhere. Plus, data shared with advertisers is de-identified. Quick pause. Veterans know you cannot de-anonymize most data. That's just worth noting. Anyways, Back to quoting TechCrunch. The company said that users can opt out of having their data processed for advertising by turning off a setting relating to technical and interaction data on both desktop and mobile at any time. And there's links on how to do that in the TechCrunch article. Mozilla also further claimed why it used certain terms, saying that the term non-exclusive was used to indicate that Mozilla doesn't want an exclusive license to user data because users should be able to do other things with that data too. Royalty-free was used because Firefox is free, and neither Mozilla nor the user should owe each other money in exchange for handling the data in order to provide the browser. And worldwide was used because Firefox is available worldwide and provides access to the global internet. I think those are some fair points, but we'll get into a deeper analysis later. The last one that I drew from here is Ars Technica, and this is more of a newer side of this that's coming to light. So this is kind of a little bit of an update, but it still concerns this same terms of use and privacy change. Ours says, Firefox maker Mozilla deleted a promise to never sell its users' personal data and is trying to assure worried users that its approach to privacy hasn't fundamentally changed. Until recently, a Firefox FAQ promised that the browser maker never has and never will sell its users' personal data. An archived version from January 30th says, does Firefox sell your personal data? And the answer is nope, never have, never will, and we protect you from many of the advertisers who do. That promise is removed from the current version. There's also a notable change in a data privacy FAQ that used to say Mozilla doesn't sell data about you and we don't buy data about you. The FAQ now explains that Mozilla is no longer making blanket promises about not selling data because some legal jurisdictions define sale in a very broad way. And here's the updated version. Mozilla doesn't sell data about you in the way that most people think about selling data, and we don't buy data about you. Since we strive for transparency and the legal definition of sale of data is extremely broad in some places, we've had to step back from making the definitive statements you know and love. We still put a lot of work into making sure that the data we share with our partners, which we need to do to make Firefox commercially viable, is stripped of any identifying information or shared only in the aggregate or is put through our privacy-preserving technologies like OHTTP. Mozilla didn't say which legal jurisdictions have these broad definitions. Last but not least, I wanted to end on going back to OMG Ubuntu. They said the new terms only apply to the executable code version of Firefox, not the source code, which means that downstream forks shouldn't be roped into these terms against their will. So there's a lot to unpack here. Those of you who listen to the patron version or follow me on Mastodon personally know that I am very critical of Mozilla. In my opinion, they have been going downhill for quite a while. I think objectively in terms of their browser, there's a lot of complaints about it not supporting a lot of modern features, a lot of modern security standards, web standards, things of that nature. Personally, I'm a little bit less concerned by that. I'm a little concerned by the direction of the company. I've said this before for veteran listeners, this is nothing new, but I know this is usually the section that's hidden behind a patron paywall, so you guys don't usually get to hear this analysis. I don't like the way that it feels to me like as a company, they're just throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks. They bought a fake review spotter, which I mean, sure, that's a cool plugin, but like, why is that Mozilla's crusade? Like, that seems really out of left field. They've been investing a bunch in AI right now, which, you know, Andy Yen from Proton made a pretty good argument that like that's the direction the market is going and it's going to go that way whether or not you jump on board. So they may as well jump on board and provide people a privacy-friendly version of AI, which I would argue we now have plenty of those options in the form of like locally run LLMs, Brave's Leo. I think DuckDuckGo even has a proxy. And then, of course, most recently, they acquired an advertising company and they're trying to get into the advertising game. And look, I understand Mozilla's trying to be self-sustaining and profitable. I approve of that because I think it's really concerning that they get like 80% of their money from Google. But it doesn't feel like they've got an actual vision. It seems like they're just jumping on anything and they're like, well, let's try this and see what works, which to some extent that's going to happen with any company. It just doesn't feel organized and it doesn't feel like there's a clear direction going on at Mozilla. I guess the only thought I really have, because I kind of put in a lot of my analysis as we went, I understand the argument for Firefox itself. Like, I understand the argument of we need an alternative to Brave and the Chromium engine and the Google monopoly, but I don't understand standing up for Mozilla at this point, especially with this. Like, this is so broad, and this, to me, is very concerning. And I know all the apologists are going to sit here and be like, well, you know, they explained, like, their wording and their licenses, and it's privacy-preserving, and it's this and that and the other. But to me, it's no different. Like, this is just all part of a broader trend. I don't know why I'm trying to convince those people. They're not going to be convinced. To me, this is just really troubling. And I think it opens a lot of doors that are not going to end well. And this is just further enshittification of Mozilla as a company, which is inevitably running off on Firefox. But unfortunately, I don't have a better solution at this time. There are a ton of forks out there. I have lost track of how many Firefox forks there are. There's Zen, which is still new, so it's kind of too early to call on that one. There's Molvat and LibreWolf, which are a little bit too hardened for the average person. There's like all these other ones that never get updated and you have to compile the code and like this, that, and the other. It's really kind of crappy. Like Firefox and Brave, I feel like are the two best browsers we have. And both of the companies behind them kind of suck. So I don't know. I think that's kind of where I'm at, is this is just disappointing and I don't know what to do about it.
I put some notes here on my end for my analysis. First, I just want to say this is like, to me, the way I'm reading this whole saga, this is 80% legal stuff. This is not a technological change directly. It's updating terms and conditions. It's legal stuff. And I think speculating what the rest of the 20% is, which is what everybody's trying to do, is just not possible. I'm seeing people say, this means they're going to be training LLMs. This means they're going to install a VPN within the browser. It's going to collect your data. It's like, we don't know what this is going to mean for the tech. For all we know, they're going to release their best feature next year that might require some data collection, and they couldn't have released that feature without these term updates. My point is both those things are likely. It's just Mozilla's direction definitely makes us think that the negative is more possible, which I don't disagree with. I think that forks are still safe. This only applies, Nate said that at the end. So if you use Molvad, if you use anything else, you don't have to really worry about this. The only people that have to worry about this are people using the actual Firefox browser. This doesn't change the licensing of the source code. It's just the installation of actual Firefox. I will say a lot of people asked me to make a video on this, like a dedicated video, but I actually don't know how anyone else made a video on it. If you covered like everything that's happening, you get like less than we're recording now for 16 minutes, and that includes the intro, the sponsor segment. I don't know how, there's nothing else to say. All you can say is, I don't know what's going to happen from here. People are coming at this with wild speculations. So if someone says this is exactly what's going to happen, they just don't know that. We just have to watch to see what happens and then react appropriately once it does. I don't think you need to move away from Firefox because of this right now. I think maybe if you're currently a Firefox user and down the road they start releasing features that are then considered like a risk to your privacy or your data or your rights, then react. And you'll probably get a heads up before it actually impacts you. So I don't think this needs to be like a plan ahead before something goes wrong. I don't see this going in a direction that's going to be terrible. And I think it's also important to keep context, which is Firefox still has an important purpose in the browser space in some ways. And a lot of these terms are still better than what you'll find in Chrome and some of these other browsers. So I think it's worth just keeping some perspective on the situation here. I think Mozilla's done worse things than this, that they got a lot less crap for. So I'm just weirded out by this being like the thing that set a lot of people off, I guess. I don't think what they did was good, and I'm not really defending Mozilla's behavior, but I am trying to challenge a lot of the common responses I've seen from people, which don't seem very grounded in the actual events that have happened. Nate might disagree with me on that one, but
like I said, I don't really have a better solution, so I'm not going to tell everybody, because my arguments come from, I'm thinking of the new oil. If I'm going to stop recommending Firefox, first of all, I don't want to do that because I like to give my readers choice. I don't want to tell everybody, just go use Brave, because there are a lot of perfectly valid criticisms against Brave. But then there's also, I asked a couple of my friends to download Molvad, and I was like, I straight up told him, I'm like, this was, I think right after Mozilla bought the advertising company, I was like, hey, do me a favor, download this browser, try it out for a week, and tell me your thoughts on it. And one of my friends, first of all, is paying for some god-awful antivirus like Norton or something, which was their first mistake, and I told him that. But they were incredibly frustrated because Norton flagged it as malware, and then the little flag wouldn't go away even after they uninstalled it, and it was just this, they had to reboot the computer, and it was really frustrating for them, and I felt really bad. And then my other friend got it installed fine, but the first thing they noticed is they went to all their streaming sites like Netflix and Hulu and HBO, and none of them worked. It's hard to find, like I said, that user-friendly browser that's been around for more than 10 minutes that I can recommend to people and be like, hey, Firefox sucks, but here's this fork of Firefox that removes all the garbage telemetry, that removes all the Google whitelisting, that removes all the, these are real things, by the way, that you can look up, removes all the advertising built-in crap and just gives you something that isn't Brave and isn't the Chromium monopoly. And things like that. If you think there is something that fits my definition, please send it to me. But what I was going to say is in response to you, you're right. I don't think this specific move is the worst thing that Mozilla's done. But to me personally, and I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it's part of a larger trend. Like I said, it's, it's adding the advertising company. It's the buckshot, invest in every company known to man and see what sticks. Some of them, which to me just don't even really seem to make sense. And then for those of you who don't know, we didn't cover this because it wasn't really directly privacy related, but just 2 weeks ago, Mozilla restructured their board, and now they have 3 new board members. And I swear to God, maybe this is my bias, but to me, it seems like they were just oh, my buddy needs a job. Let's create some job titles. It's what are you people doing? Is there anyone at this company who knows how to run a company? But just from the outside looking in, it's I don't understand where this company is going. It doesn't seem coherent. And it doesn't seem like they have any sort of direction or vision or plan. It's like they just walk into work one day and go, I don't know, let's try this and see what happens. And it's so frustrating. It's been such a long history of questionable decisions and tone deafness that makes me just not even trust them, because at this point, I feel like it's just a matter of time before they wake up one day and it's like, hey, we've gone ahead and baked Google Analytics into every single page and injected into the code. And I'm literally going to read that headline and just be like, yeah, that tracks. Like, I'm not even surprised anymore. That, or they'll wake up and be like, hey, we're proud to announce Mozilla Pizza Company. It's like, cool. Nobody asked for that either, but whatever.
And now we have the data breaches. We're going to start with a U.S. employee screening giant, DISA, D-I-S-A, says hackers access data of more than 3 million people. So the services they provide are like drug and alcohol testing and background checks to more than 55,000 enterprises and a third of Fortune 500 companies. The breach occurred on February 9th and was discovered on April 22nd, 2024. This impacted over 3 million people. It included social security numbers, financial account information, including credit card numbers, and government-issued ID documents.
Orange Group has confirmed a breach after an attacker leaked company documents. So this is a leading French telecommunications operator and digital services provider. There were about 380,000 individuals impacted, including current and former employees, partners, and contractors. The data leaked included email addresses, source code, invoices, contracts, customer and employee info, and partial payment card details, but only for Romanian customers on that last one.
Have I been pwned? If you have never heard of it, check it out. You can put in an email and see if you've been caught in any data breaches. They've added 284 million accounts stolen by an info stealer malware. This data was found on a Telegram channel known as Alien Text Base and contains almost 500 million unique website and email address pairings, 244 million new passwords, and 199 million updated passwords in the database. The data also includes potentially sensitive information like names, usernames, IP addresses, physical addresses, and phone numbers.
This last data breach is kind of an update. We might not have covered the original story, but there's a company called Lee Enterprises. They're a US-based media company that owns and operates over 77 daily newspapers, as well as 350 publications, digital media platforms, and marketing services. Their primary focus is local news and advertising, with a digital audience that reaches tens of millions of people monthly. The original story is that they were suffering some kind of cyber attack that was crippling operations, but they wouldn't really say more. We now know that it was the Quillen ransomware gang who is threatening to leak the stolen data. This allegedly includes 120,000 files totaling over 350 gigabytes and includes government ID scans, NDAs or non-disclosure agreements, financial spreadsheets, contracts and agreements, and quote, other confidential documents. And I think the publication date for that is like March 5th if they don't pay.
And now the company news. The first 3 stories are all Google/Android stories. I'll just cover them really quickly here. First one, you might have heard about this. There was a new Android feature scanning your photos for sensitive content. Pretty much, there's a service that's being installed on Android devices automatically, I assume through Google Play Services. It doesn't have an icon, it doesn't show up on the usual list of running apps, and it makes it difficult for users to find and manage. They've reported that the safety core reinstall itself even during system updates or through Google Play Services after uninstalling the service. Google's come forward and said that sensitive content warnings doesn't allow Google access to the contents of your images, nor does Google know that nudity may have been detected. Google also assured users that Safety Core performs its functions locally on the device without sending any data to external servers. There are instructions to disable it in the article, so we highly recommend checking that out if you're on a device with Google Play Services to see if this is something on your system. On this topic, Google has confirmed Gmail to ditch SMS code authentication. So they're planning to ditch SMS codes and replace them with QR codes. This will not impact more secure options like TOTP or passkeys. It's unclear if this will impact requiring a phone number, though, to verify new accounts. My assumption is yes, so they're just replacing the SMS side of it. And then finally, Qualcomm and Google have teamed up to offer 8 years of Android updates. This extended support window only applies to Android devices with the latest Qualcomm chipsets. The 8-year support timeline will be extended to devices running the new Snapdragon 8 Elite mobile platform, which powers devices like OnePlus 13 and the Galaxy S25. Later this year, the same policy will be applied to the company's new Snapdragon 8 and Snapdragon 7 series chips, and you can expect the same deal for at least the next 5 generations of Qualcomm silicon. These are their flagship chips, so don't expect this from like the budget phones yet. Maybe we'll see that on that end as well, but we haven't seen confirmation of that yet. And the key takeaway here is for privacy and cybersecurity, this move will make it easier for OEMs to release full Android OS updates even toward the end of a device's lifespan, ensuring a more secure and long-lasting Android experience for users.
Our last company story comes from AdGuard. It says AdGuard launches nightly version of world's first Linux ad blocker. So this protects all browsers and apps on your device while providing precise ad blocking using AdGuard's filters, third-party filters, and user rules. It also removes annoying elements such as pop-ups, live chat widgets, cookie consent notifications, and app download banners, and it warns you about malicious websites with browsing security features, and it also supports third-party filters and user rules. It is currently available for download via curl or GitHub, and on the roadmap, they are planning to add encrypted DNS and split tunneling.
All right, research. We have a few interesting stories this week. So the first one, a single default password exposes access to dozens of apartment buildings. This is from the door access control system Enterphone Mesh. And pretty much it uses a default password, which anyone can use to remotely access door locks and elevator controls in dozens of buildings across the US and Canada. They discovered this and found 71 systems relying on these default shipped credentials. Exploiting the bug is as simple as taking the default password from the system's installation guide on the website and plugging the password into the internet-facing login page on any affected building systems.
Next up, we have Apple's Find My Network exploited to let attackers silently track any Bluetooth device. So researchers at George Mason University have uncovered a vulnerability in Apple's Find My Network that allows hackers to silently track any Bluetooth device. The exploit, which has been dubbed en-route tag, has a success rate of 90% and can be used to track devices with high accuracy. The way the article summarized it, they said they have essentially found a way to turn any device, such as a phone or a laptop, into an AirTag without the owner ever realizing it. And then after that, attackers can simply remotely track the location. So the researchers have alerted Apple, and Apple has said they're going to roll out a fix, but researchers warn that a fix may take years to roll out as not everyone will update their devices immediately. The attacker can do it all remotely from thousands of miles away with just a few dollars.
Scientists are creating the world's first chip that can protect data in the age of quantum computing attacks. And this was from Switzerland, and they developed a new method called QS7001. This is to protect internet security against quantum computing attacks. This combines two quantum-resistant encryption protocols, dilithium and Kyber, with a reduction in data transmission time to close the window of opportunity for attacks. Some of the details in the article, and I'm going to be quoting it. It is worth noting that this method does not prevent intercepted information from being copied and stored, and at that point, a quantum computer would not be constrained by the reduced transmission time. However, what this does is narrow the window of opportunity for interception and prevent intercepted messages from being modified or misdirected.
We're going to move into the politics section. So the first one comes from Sweden, where Signal is threatening to pull out of Sweden. The Swedish government is proposing a bill that would require messaging apps like Signal and WhatsApp to store user data, including message history, for law enforcement purposes. This has sparked concerns from Signal CEO Meredith Whittaker, who stated, quote, "If you create a vulnerability based on Swedish wishes, it would create a way to undermine our entire network. Therefore, we will never introduce these backdoors." The purpose of the bill, which may be passed next year, is for the police and security services to be able to request message history in retrospect for individuals suspected of crimes. The armed forces, on the other hand, are negative and write in a letter to the government that the proposal cannot be realized, quote, "without introducing vulnerabilities and backdoors that can be exploited by third parties," unquote. And then on a similar note, this one comes from Tuda. It says, France is about to pass the worst surveillance law in the EU. We must stop them now. So I'm just going to quote the relevant part of the article because, you know, this is one of those blog posts that's designed for public awareness. So most of it is kind of explaining what is end-to-end encryption, why is the idea of a backdoor stupid, which we've covered that ad nauseum last week. Quoting the article, France is about to amend a bill against drug trafficking, the narco traffic law, which will force encrypted messaging apps like Signal and WhatsApp to backdoor the encryption for being able to hand over decrypted chat messages of suspected criminals within 72 hours of the request. In order to enforce it, the text provides for, quote, a fine of 1.5 million euros for natural persons and a fine of up to 2% of the annual turnover for legal persons, unquote. The amendment has already been passed by the Senate and is now moving fast to the National Assembly.
A judge has said that the US government violated privacy law by disclosing personal data to Doge, the new thing in the US. So they blocked Doge from accessing personal data held by the US Department of Education and Office of Personnel Management, OPM. The ruling follows one in a different court that blocked Doge's access to Department of Treasury information. The American Federation of Teachers and other plaintiffs have shown that education and OPM likely violated the Privacy Act by disclosing their personal information to Doge affiliates without their consent. Boardman is the judge behind this, and he granted a temporary restraining order that's in place until March 10th. She declined to extend the temporary restraining order to Department of Treasury data, but only because a different court issued a preliminary injunction blocking that access on Friday.
This next one I think I included as more of a signal boost. Big Brother Watch condemns the UK's first use of city-wide facial recognition in Cardiff. So the South Wales police are introducing, quote, semi-permanent facial recognition cameras across Cardiff city centre during this year's Six Nations Rugby Internationals. Cameras will be positioned at the main pedestrian entry points, making it impossible for members of the public to avoid the cameras. Forces have previously deployed live facial recognition vans equipped with one camera. Madeline Stone, who is a senior advocacy officer at Big Brother Watch, said, quote, embedding facial recognition surveillance in a citywide CCTV network represents a shocking expansion of police surveillance and turns Cardiff into an Orwellian zone of biometric surveillance. Just for additional context, they say for the last 3 years, South Wales Police has not made a single arrest due to its use of technology at sporting events. This technology specifically. Yet, the force continues to waste taxpayer money on this rights-abusing technology. No other democracy in the world spies on its population with live facial recognition in this cavalier and chilling way. South Wales Police must immediately stop this dystopian trial.
So Apple's launched age assurance tech as US states mull social media laws. So Apple said it will introduce a way for parents to share the age of a child with app developers without revealing sensitive information like birthdays or government identification numbers. The move comes as a number of US state and federal lawmakers consider age verification laws for social media and other apps. That has set up a conflict in the tech industry over which party should be responsible for checking ages for users under 18, app stores or each individual app. As an alternative, Apple said it will roll out what it calls age assurance. Using it, parents will be able to input a child's age when setting up a child's account.
That'll take us into the free and open source software section. And we have a bunch of stories, but they're all kind of short. So the first one, Nextcloud Hub 10, your unified modular digital workspace. So there's a ton of new updates in this one, but the one they really buried the lead on and the stuff that's really relevant to this podcast, end-to-end encryption for calls and files in the browser. And then also there is a brute force protection that they're adding, and there was an extension for that in the past. But now, again, they're adding it natively, so you don't have to add this extension. Just another little one to throw on there. They're also adding remote backups. So yeah, lots of new stuff in Nextcloud Hub. Definitely check that out. Kagi is offering 30 days of Pro for free without a credit card. They sent out an email. So I don't know if this is like you already had to have had an account and they're trying to lure you in, but they straight up say that. They're like, look, we're so confident you're going to like our Pro service so much. We think you're going to sign up. So free trial, no strings attached. So for those of you who are interested in Kagi, they do have a free tier, but now you might be able to go ahead and try out this free trial, which they've never done before. So that's interesting. So this next story comes from Proton. It's not really super privacy related, but just something to keep you guys updated on. Proton has decided to ditch Mastodon in favor of Reddit. The link in the show notes goes to their Mastodon profile, and it's not a post. It's actually written in their bio. So for those of you who want to like see it for yourself, check the bio. And then our last two stories, the first one we'll take from Calyx. They have dropped their Android 15 February feature update, and normally we don't cover these. So first of all, they have a new PDF viewer natively built into the operating system, which is great, because up until now, you had to go find a PDF viewer. They also have a text-to-speech generator. They've deprecated the clear text restriction feature, but I think that's more of just a modernization thing. The big thing that I was excited about is they finally have Android Auto support. On the other side of the coin, for Graphene users, they're rolling out a location services proxy. So I couldn't find any sort of official announcement or documentation on their website, so I'm kind of piecing things together based on like forum posts and stuff. But from what I tell, they're going to start proxying your location through their servers before it goes to like Apple or something to try and protect your privacy a little better.
And now we have Misfits, and we actually have quite a few Misfits this week, so we'll try to get through these quickly. So the first one is John Oliver launched a little episode that we wanted to shout out where he said, make yourself less valuable to Meta, and it's a whole website, and it suggests Signal, Mastodon, PixelFed, and Blue Sky as Meta alternatives. So check out that video and also check out the website if you want to learn more about that. And there was a guide there that was done as a collaboration with the EFF. And then there also was a new AutoColor Linux backdoor, which targets North American governments and universities. So this was a undocumented Linux backdoor dubbed AutoColor, which was observed in attacks between November and December of 2024. According to Palo Alto Networks, Unit 42, researchers who discovered the malware, it is highly evasive and difficult to remove from infected systems capable of maintaining access for extended periods. Given its stealth, modular design, and remote control features, this is a serious threat, and those in government and academic environments targeted in the observed attacks should definitely try to watch out for this kind of thing. To pick up on this, they suggest monitoring changes to etc and then ld.preload. Definitely check this out in the sources if this doesn't make sense to you over audio or video. You can also check procnet TCP for output anomalies. Again, please check the sources. And using behavior-based threat detection solutions. The researchers have also listed indicators of compromise at the bottom of the report, so inspecting system logs and network traffic for connections to the listed C2 IPs is also crucial.
This next one is actually kind of an update to a story we covered a while back. The headline says Disney engineer downloaded quote-unquote helpful AI tool that ended up completely destroying his life. This story, for those who don't remember, a bunch of Disney intellectual property, mostly in the form of Slack messages, got leaked. And there were some rumors that it was like an insider threat. There's just a lot of confusion over exactly what happened. And basically now we know. So what happened is there was one specific employee who downloaded an AI tool from GitHub, and it was an AI image generator. You type in a prompt and it gives you an update. The article suggests that this was not job related. He downloaded it at home on his home computer, and it turned out to be malware that hijacked the contents of his password manager. So quoting the article, he had his credit card numbers stolen and his logins for financial accounts leaked in the data dump. Hackers even posted his social security number and login information for the Ring cameras in his home. He saw his life upended after the hack, with even his kids' Roblox accounts hacked. His social media accounts were filled with offensive language from people who used the stolen data to log in, unquote. It says a few weeks after the hack, he was fired from Disney after a forensic analysis of his work computer found that he had accessed pornographic material on the device, which he denies doing. His health insurance was terminated, and he lost about $200,000 in bonuses, he told the Wall Street Journal. And our last story is pretty quick, but pretty interesting. For the first time ever, California has shut down a data broker for failing to register. So the California Privacy Protection Agency, the CPPA, on Thursday, they announced that a data broker, who is Background Alert, must shut down its business for 3 years for failing to comply with the state's Delete Act, which requires brokers to register with the state. Background Alert relies on billions of public records to develop and sell individual profiles over its website, drawing inferences about them to identify people who may somehow be associated with the individual being searched. The Delete Act requires data brokers to register with the state annually and to pay a fee. Those fees are funding the construction of a tool consumers can use to compel all data brokers to delete their personal data with the push of a button. So that's all we have for this week. Mozilla has rolled out their first ever terms of service and privacy policy. For some of you, may not be a big deal. It's something important to have on your radar regardless. Sweden and France are jumping on the encryption backdoor bandwagon now that the floodgates have been opened. And a lot of big news from FOSS projects. Some of it good, most of it good, some of it not great, but there's always a lot of news in the FOSS world, it feels like.
Again, our sponsor of this podcast is EasyOptOuts in this episode. And just want to outline that both of us use EasyOptOuts. I registered with them a few months back now, and it's been a great experience. It's $20 a year, so it's just like a single $20 purchase, and you have it for 12 months. Cancellation is easy. There are even refunds if you're not satisfied with the service for any reason. We've had a history in the past of services like this not being as effective as they claim to be, or hiding them behind like really weird, some of them private plans that they don't advertise on their website, which are like $1,000. It's insane. So there's a really weird industry, and I really appreciate the transparency that EasyOptOuts has brought to this industry, and they've been shown to be effective by consumer reports and privacy guides. They ask for minimal information, so you only have to give them what you need to give them or whatever you want to give them, and they only send it off if a website already has your information. Some of these services just mass spam your information to all these websites, even if they don't have your information, which doesn't make any sense. They don't do that. And they also have business plans for any of you who want to offer this as a perk to maybe employees or anyone that you work alongside. So really cool service, cannot recommend them enough. Getting to meet the two employees and founders has also been really pleasant. They don't work with any third-party contractors or anything, so it's just two guys who run a really good service over there. So what I moved over to myself, and I think is probably like by far the best service to use for the value. Go check it out in the description. Thank you, EasyOptOuts, for sponsoring the podcast, and thank you all for supporting our podcast by trusting us and trusting, I guess, the people who sponsor us. We put a lot of work into vetting them.
And thank you also for listening to the podcast. Links to all the stories can be found in the show notes. If you have a story that you think we should cover, please send it to news@surveillancereport.tech. The final thing we want to ask, please share the podcast around. Make sure you are subscribed. Give us a rating if you're listening on a platform where that's an option. We don't do any sort of marketing, but we're trying to reach as many people as possible with privacy, and every little bit helps. So thanks again for listening, and we'll be back next week.